The wind of the Arizona plains hissed across the dry earth as Samuel Cutter rode toward his lonely cabin, the sky above him bruised with the last purple stains of dusk. He wasn't a man known for charity. Frontier life had taught him to distrust footsteps, shadows, and smiles. But he also wasn't a man who could let suffering sit in front of him without lending his hand. That was why, when he found the two young Apache women collapsed near the riverbank earlier that evening, dusty, weak, and too exhausted to speak more than their names, he didn't turn away as most men would have. He lifted them gently, carried them onto his horse one at a time, and brought them to the safety of his home, fully aware that such a choice might cost him dearly. The Apache were proud, fierce, and protective of their own. If these women belonged to a warrior or were daughters of a chief, then Samuel could very well be a dead man before the next sunrise. Yet as he tended their wounds, washed their dust-covered faces, and tried to coax a bit of water between their cracked lips, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. They were frightened. They were young, and they had clearly been running from something. The path behind them showed broken brush, scattered hoofprints, and at least one trail of blood. Samuel didn't know whether they fled enemies or their own people, but he knew danger when he saw it, and it was following close behind. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and dried sage. The walls were lined with simple tools, a rope coil, a tin cup, a few clay jars. The bed, his only one, was wide enough for one man, but he offered it to the sisters without hesitation. He laid them down carefully, tucking a wool blanket over them, and even though they fell asleep instantly, he could see the fear lingering in the stiff grip of their hands, in the faint twitching of their eyelids. They had lived through something terrible. He didn't ask what. He didn't need to. As Samuel stood at the edge of the bed, watching the way the lamplight softened their faces, he felt something strange tighten in his chest, a mixture of protectiveness and foreboding. Outside, the land was too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes just before something breaks. He stepped to the window and scanned the horizon, scanning for movement. Nothing, only darkness swallowing the plains. But he felt it in his bones. Something was coming. He turned back to the women. The older sister, maybe 19, breathed slow, steady and peaceful now, her arm resting across her stomach. Her dark braids spread across the pillow like river currents. The younger, perhaps 16, curled slightly inward, clutching the blanket like a shield. Samuel whispered, "You're safe here, at least for the night." But safety was a fragile thing on the frontier, and promises were often broken by sunrise. Hours passed. The moon rose. Coyotes cried in the distance. And Samuel finally allowed himself to sit, though he didn't sleep. He just watched the door, his rifle leaning against his chair, the sound of the crackling fire, the only comfort he had. Sometime after midnight, the younger sister stirred, her voice cracking as she mumbled something in Apache. Samuel didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, pleading, fearful, heartbroken. He placed a calming hand near her, but not touching, saying gently, "Rest easy." But she shook her head weakly, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes, and with a trembling breath, she whispered a single English word, "Father." Samuel's stomach dropped. If they were the daughters of an Apache, leader especially, one known to defend his children with unrelenting fury, then Samuel had just placed himself in the center of a conflict far larger than mercy could solve. But before he could say anything, a sound shattered the stillness of the night, a distant rumble. At first, Samuel thought it was thunder, but thunder didn't beat the ground like that. Thunder didn't come in perfect rhythm. That was the sound of hooves. Many hooves, hundreds. Samuel shot to his feet, grabbed his rifle, and blew out the lantern. He stood perfectly still, listening. The rumble grew louder, the ground beginning to vibrate beneath the cabin floor. Samuel moved to the window, pushing aside the corner of the curtain just enough to see outside. What he saw made his breath lock in his chest. A vast line of mounted silhouettes stretched across the plains, dark against the moonlit grass. Riders, dozens, no, hundreds, moving with the synchronized precision of a war band. Apache warriors, at least 150. "Damn," Samuel whispered. Slowly, he turned back toward the bed. The older sister had awakened now. She sat up halfway, her eyes wide with dread as she heard what Samuel heard. "They tracked you," he said quietly. She nodded, sorrow and guilt tightening her face. "They will kill you," she whispered. "For taking us." Samuel shook his head. "I didn't take you. I helped you. They won't care." A thundering crash caught Samuel's attention. The warriors had stopped outside the cabin. Their shadows filled the window, torches blazing, spears glinting, horses breathing heavily. Samuel clenched his jaw. He'd always hoped to die peacefully at an old age, not as a misunderstanding in the night. But he supposed a man didn't get to choose such things. A heavy fist slammed against the door, a single, commanding bang that shook dust from the ceiling beams. The older sister inhaled sharply. "It is our father," she whispered. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. Then he stepped forward, lifted the latch, and pulled the door open slowly, with both hands visible in front of him. Standing outside was a towering Apache chief, his face hardened by years of struggle and war. His horse snorted beneath him, and behind him stood a vast sea of warriors, every one of them armed. The chief's gaze swept Samuel from head to toe, cold and unforgiving. Then his attention shifted past Samuel's shoulder, toward the bed where his daughters sat trembling. His nostrils flared, his jaw tightened. For a moment Samuel thought the man might strike him dead where he stood. But the chief dismounted deliberately, his boots hitting the earth like thunder. He strode past Samuel without a word, entering the cabin, towering over his daughters. The girls immediately bowed their heads, staying silent. Their father's expression flickered. Pain, relief, anger, pride, all warring inside him. When he finally spoke, his deep voice rolled like distant mountains. "Who hurt you?" The older sister swallowed. "The same men who have been hunting our people. We escaped, but only because this man helped us." The chief slowly turned to face Samuel. The entire cabin seemed to shrink under the weight of his stare. Samuel didn't speak, didn't move, didn't breathe. The chief stepped closer. "Why did you help them?" Samuel answered with the only truth he had. "Because they needed help." A long silence followed. Outside, 150 warriors waited for their leader's judgment, whether to burn the cabin and kill the stranger or to withdraw peacefully. Slowly the chief extended his arm, not in hostility, but in the gesture of a warrior acknowledging another. "You have shown honor," he said. "Few men of your kind show mercy to mine." Samuel relaxed only slightly, though his hand trembled with the fading sharpness of fear. "They're good girls," he said quietly. "They deserve safety." The chief nodded once, a heavy, meaningful nod. Then he turned to his daughters, placing a protective hand on each of their shoulders. "You will ride with us," he told them. The older daughter hesitated before looking back at Samuel. "Thank you," she whispered. The younger repeated the word in Apache. The father and daughters exited the cabin, rejoining the massive war band. Before mounting his horse, the chief turned once more to Samuel and said, "If ever you need protection, call my name and we will come. You are friend to our blood." Then, like a sweeping tide, the warriors moved as one, hooves pounding against the earth, torches flickering like falling stars as they vanished into the darkness. Samuel stood alone at his doorway, heart still racing, the silence returning like a deep exhale from the land. The cabin felt both emptier and fuller, haunted by a glimpse of death. He had somehow survived, strengthened by a strange alliance forged in a single night. He closed the door, sighed heavily, and looked at the empty bed. "Well," he muttered, "that's a story no one will believe." And as the fire crackled back to life, he couldn't help but smile, because sometimes survival wasn't just luck. Sometimes it was the reward for doing the right thing, even when the world made it hard. And if you enjoyed this tale, this night of danger, mercy and unexpected loyalty, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story waiting on the frontier. Adventure is just beginning.